She's a rolling.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Two Beards in a Bible. I'm John Swano,
I'm Dave Tenney.
and we're in Colossians 3.
Yeah. We're
Verse
cooking right
1.
along.
Yeah.
Who's
about
reading?
I think it's your turn, isn't it?
Okay. I'm going to read the first 11 verses.
Okay.
He says, "If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. For you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Therefore, put to death your members which are on the earth, fornication, uncleanliness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Because of these things, the wrath of God is a coming upon the sons of disobedience, in which you yourselves walked when you lived in them. But now you yourselves are to put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him. Whether there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Christ is all and in all."
So we're supposed to be different.
Apparently. Apparently.
Right from the very beginning, if then you were raised. So, this is pointing us to the idea that we should be looking inwardly, that we should be reflecting on
Right.
ourselves. Seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. So, set our mind on those things. We don't spend our time worrying so much about the things of this earth.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, and that's basically, so what's interesting is he says that, and the rest of what I read is just saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Except he's just detailing those things out.
Yeah. All the things that you should put to death there in
Yeah.
verse 5.
Yeah. Right.
And the idea of setting your mind on things above. Do you ever meet somebody, or perhaps you can think back to a time in your life where your mind was so set on something you couldn't think of anything else?
Oh my gosh.
When I was in the 4th grade, I got a new bicycle. I didn't learn anything that day in school. All I did was think about that bicycle.
Oh yeah.
The day that I was going to go pick it up, that I was going to get it. And I remember thinking that day was lost, because that's all I could think of. And how many people turn on the news or, spend so much time with the things of this world that they can't think about anything else. They've set their mind on those things.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to, or the main focus of our life should be godly things.
Even today, we can have something go wrong at work, or something go wrong with a brother or sister, and that can eat up my whole mind.
Yeah.
And that can, so I mean, it's a thing that, we got to work on.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are some of those things that you're gonna, especially if it's a godly thing, like, maybe somebody's sick or somebody's, you might spend a lot of time thinking about that person.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's a thing that's above, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We've had situations in the past where people have fallen away, and that takes up a bit of mind power. For a while, you're thinking about them and thinking about how is it that we could reach out to them? How is it that we could help them? And that's something that's something I believe God is wanting us to set our minds on, because we're thinking of heaven, we're thinking of the thing that He came to this earth for, the salvation of souls, and that's a worthwhile effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
To think about, but to get wound up with, it's no secret. I've told many people that I'm kind of a news junkie at times, and I can get wrapped up in that.
Yeah,
and I have to just have to stop and say, this is not important.
I'm not so much of a news junkie, but like I can have a project going on, and I can just I I can just want to not think about anything but that, and that's
Right.
that's a problem. You
Right.
know, I think we got to train ourselves to shut that stuff off.
Right.
You know, otherwise, it's gonna start becoming number one in our life,
Oh, absolutely.
and that becomes a problem. I think that's why he says in verse 5, he says, "Put to death your members which are on the earth," and then he has a list of things. Now, I don't think there's anything sinful about thinking about some problem you have at work or whatever. There's nothing sinful in there, but there are certain things that we can think about that are sinful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's detailing here. Fornication, right? That would be any sort of sexual thing. I would imagine that probably a broad way to define that.
Sexual relations outside
of marriage, yeah, right. Uncleanliness. Well, I mean, that would just be getting involved. I mean, there are lots of things that I guess would be unclean.
Right.
Trying to think of what a good example with. I mean, I immediately think about maybe our language. Uncleanliness or talking about maybe things that we shouldn't talk about.
Right.
Passion. Of course, you can have passion for things and it can be good, but you can also have passion for things that aren't good.
Right.
Evil desire. That goes without saying. Covetousness, wanting something that you don't have that somebody else has. And he says that's idolatry.
Yeah.
And when we talk about covet, that is like, when you were a kid, you're thinking about that, you were coveting that bike.
Right. Right. And this is telling us just the same. It's just the same as making a brazen calf in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you got to be careful with that stuff,
Right.
It's okay to have hobbies, but...
Oh, yeah, they can absolutely take over.
Yeah, they're not that important. You got.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of hobbies, you got to be able to just let them sit for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you have to be able to walk away from them.
Yeah.
And I think of sports. I think of how many families get dragged down the deep hole of sports with their children, and inevitably, if you get serious about a sport, there's going to be some tournament that comes up on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to say no.
Yeah.
There's going to be some, if you're in Scouts, there's going to be a camp out that bleeds over into Sunday, and you have to be able to say no.
Yeah. I know somebody who, they were big in, their kids were big into sports, and they kind of put that as a priority. And then later on, that person is regretful that they did that because their kids are not faithful the way they ought to be. And I think the parents of those kids that are grown now, they realize that they taught them that way.
Right.
We got to be careful with those things.
Right.
It's
kind of telling your kids, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work.
Yeah. If you're going to make God number one, then make him number one.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else has got to be under that.
Right.
And if you can't do that, well, then,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. And that's, that makes for some hard decisions sometimes. I mean, I say hard decisions. They're really not that hard once you
set your mind that way.
Once you set your mind, and that's the whole point. The idea of setting your mind on something. That is that's the danger when we set our mind on something that is not godly.
Yeah, absolutely. What else does he say?
In verse 8 there, but now you yourselves are to put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds.
Can you go through those things and talk about what they are?
The anger, and this is, we're told in the scriptures to be angry and sin not.
Right.
But what is, what's the problem with anger? What are we we're also told not to let the sun go down on our wrath.
Right.
So anger is attached to our emotions, which God made. And in a way, when I get mad at something, I tend to take action on it. So sometimes I got to get mad at stuff to motivate myself to do something. And so there's a place for it, but you don't let that again be the thing that you set your mind on.
Right.
I know people, and I've been in this situation in the past where, sometimes it feels good to be angry. So sometimes you get that adrenaline rush.
I think some people get addicted to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're just angry all the time because that's comfortable.
Yeah.
Maybe it
Makes
gives
them
them
feel
in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't. What's wrath?
Wrath is trying to take vengeance upon people. Somebody's done me wrong, and so I'm going to be vengeful to that degree.
Malice is kind of that same way. Mm-hmm. It's just this idea of taking action, committing harm against another person.
Right.
What's the next one? Blasphemy. What's that mean?
And that's attributing things to God that are not His.
Right.
And that's dangerous stuff.
I think people use the Lord's name in vain all the time, and you just want to stop and say, you know what? God ain't got nothing to do with this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and
listen
and
to what you're saying.
When it's common in the world for people to blame God every time somebody gets sick. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason we have physical death and the destruction we do in this world has everything to do with sin.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with God's plan for mankind. And so even that, you're stepping on some. Yeah. If your mother gets sick with a deadly illness, let's not blame God.
God already made a way for her to get out of this mess.
Right. And it has everything to do with His eternal purpose.
Right.
Which is the salvation of souls. I mean, Job understood, that he need not be cursing God for the things that were happening to him.
What did his wife say?
Curse God and die.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder whatever happened to her.
Right. Yeah. Well, what did he tell her? He said, "You speak like one of the foolish women."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what. He talks about. He says. Filthy language. Of course, we gotta watch what we say. Mm-hmm. It's our language that gets us in trouble most of the time.
Yeah. And do not lie to one another.
Yeah.
Since you have put off the old man with his deeds.
Tell the truth even if it hurts.
Yeah. And that's how addictive is lying.
Yeah.
I
got a situation at work where I had posted this silly little note in the staff lounge, and there was I'll tell you this because it's kind of funny. There's a phone in their staff lounge, and you can't call the phone. It's it's part of a phone system, so it's there's no number to call the phone. And there was a card on there that said bomb threat instructions. I'm like, why do they have the bomb threat instructions on a phone? They can't be called from the outside. I said, oh, maybe if you wanted to phone in a bomb threat. So I wrote this note out and I said, step 1, make a bomb. Step 2, decide who you want to call and whatever. And I thought it was pretty humorous the way I wrote it, but somebody took it. It's not very humorous.
You get called into HR.
Well, what's funny is I didn't put my name on it.
Oh.
But I'm in a meeting and I heard about it and they were upset about it. Mm-hmm. Now listen, I didn't have to fess up to it because they didn't know I did it. I could have just kept my mouth shut.
Right.
Would have gone by.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I immediately said, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, which I believe was the wise move,
Right.
That was but I mean, I couldn't have not done that. I mean, I had to.
It's always the case that the truth is the best. Even if it's even if everything in your human body wants to avoid that, the truth is always the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, what's funny is when I wrote that, my intent was to be funny.
Just to poke fun at
It was to poke fun at this thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, it wasn't completely taken that way.
Right.
No, somebody said, well, we thought it was somebody just trying to do that.
Yeah.
Well, it was, but, I think they were hot after, they were worked up over another situation, and they thought maybe it tied into this other situation. So, you know how things go sometimes, but,
Yeah, it's, I find that not everybody shares my sense of humor, so sometimes it's best to keep that in my mind.
Yeah. You know what's funny is, John, when I wrote that thing, and I was leaving, I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I was thinking that.
Right.
I'm like, somebody might I was thinking that in the back of my mind, but I'm like, nobody's going to take that, Right. But, hey, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Not for the first time either. But, but you know what? I think we need to go through things like that once in a while to keep us humble.
Yeah. and it's, it's a learning experience, and we say, okay. And it helps you to think, like, not thinking that anyone would take it that way.
Yeah.
Now you have kind of a window into the minds of
exactly.
others.
Yeah.
And we are supposed to take others into account.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now going forward.
Yeah. Yep. Now I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna joke about anything like that because people get worked up over that. But
right. Yeah, I made a comment. Social media is something that just meant to get you into trouble, I suppose. And I made a comment. It was someone that I know, and it was a snowy day, and their child was driving to school for the first time in the snow. And so I made a joke about it. I'm like, it'll be okay. I'm just under the
right.
It'll be okay. And I said something kind of snarky, I guess, that I thought was funny. Well, she lost it.
She did not take that as funny.
She was at home on the edge of her chair, worried to death that her child was going to die in a fiery crash because of the snow. And that, and I felt bad afterwards, but it was a learning experience for me to say, okay, not everybody thinks the way that you do.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that it is.
I got to tell you, what was that? It was a week or so ago. It was a Monday with that snow. Mm-hmm. And of course, so Megan had to drive to Ohio State, and Julie was just so worried.
Yeah.
Well, I texted Megan. I said, "Hey, did you get to work okay?" And she calls me, and she's like, "Yeah, I just got here. It was bad." I said, "Did you text your mom?" No. I said, "Megan, text your mom right now." She's on pins and needles,
Right. This is the first winter that my daughter's driven in the snow as well. And the first snowy day that she drove to work, my wife was like, "Do you think we need to drive her to work?" And I'm like, No, she's fine.
You got to learn.
Yeah. She'll either crash or she won't.
Yeah, it'll be okay.
The car can be replaced.
Yeah, exactly. And then she'll know for next time. Right? Yeah, that was my attitude as well. But my wife, oh my gosh, she was really worried about
dads and moms. That's just how it goes.
They're different, and it's okay. All right. He said, do not lie to one another. He says, and put on the new man who was renewed in a knowledge according to the image of him created him, where there's neither Greek or Jew, uncircumcised or circumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Christ is all in all. So the idea here is, for one thing, we got to be a different person, and we have to be renewed in knowledge.
Right.
And that isn't going to happen passively.
Right. Right.
It's not enough to just go to church.
Right.
It's not enough to read the Bible.
Yeah.
And I think you should read the Bible, but I think I emphasize more, rather than just read the Bible, you need to study the Bible.
Chase some squirrels.
There's a vast difference between just reading and sitting down and studying.
Right. Absolutely.
Because you may accidentally learn something just reading before bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you have to be able to. So let's say, for your example, you're reading before bed, and so you've got perhaps a bedtime. You gotta go to sleep by a certain time, so you can get up by a certain time, and you come across an interesting thought that you'd like to kind of chase.
But then you fall asleep.
And then you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't leave the study of the scriptures as the afterthought.
Yeah.
But you make it an actual part of your day.
Yeah.
And it takes some dedication.
Yeah. I have, right now I have 3 nights. Monday, Friday, and Saturday that I don't have to either go to church, do a podcast with John,
right,
have a home Bible study with a guy,
right.
Those are taken up. That takes up, and then of course Sunday. So there's 4 nights there taken up. But these other 3 nights, what I do is I have a schedule. On those 3 nights, I start at 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. I go down and study the Bible for an hour to an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. Of those 3 nights I have in, I go do 9 to 10, 9 to 10:30, depending on what I get into. But I have it scheduled. Yeah. When I have that free night, I'm going to spend an hour and a half studying the Bible.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with this stuff we're talking about either.
Right. Yeah.
And you gotta do that.
Yeah.
You gotta, and I know you do that, but you're a preacher, so it's your job.
Right.
Right. But if you're not a preacher, you still need, and I'm not I mean, I do a little bit, but I'm not a preacher.
Right.
I mean, I'm just, I guess what you'd call a layman.
Right.
But you've got
Yeah, you have to make it a part of it has to be a part of your life. Otherwise, it's like the people that, if you spend your life trying to avoid the scriptures, and then you expect, it seems as though everybody, when they die, they want to go to heaven.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that really wants to go to hell.
Right, exactly.
So, but you spend your life avoiding godly things, and then you expect to be with God in the end, or even to expect that you'd even want to. I mean, you have to make an effort to be a part of God's people.
Some people say, well, I don't get anything out of church.
Right.
Well, you don't put anything into it either.
Right.
So what did you expect was going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah, I not too long ago had a conversation with somebody that just said, I just don't have any desire for church. It's just boring.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, what do? You have to come to the point where you realize that it's an important thing.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things that start out as boring, but when you put your mind to it, you start to study. It's not boring anymore.
Oh,
the scriptures are anything but boring.
No, if
you spend any time in them, you realize real quick that this is not boring stuff. This is eternally important.
Yeah, there are, like I said, there's the greatest stories you could ever be exposed to are in the Bible.
Right.
There are no greater stories. In fact, like so many movies are based on biblical themes, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You like Star Wars? Right. Based on biblical themes.
Right.
Right? You like Harry Potter? Based on biblical themes, and 1,000 other movies just like them.
Well, I mean, look at how popular just the movie the Ten Commandments was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that, for whatever it is, I'm sure they took our artistic license with it, but
yeah, I think you'd have to if you was making a movie,
right?
But
but even it's full of just the scriptures as they are. They are. It is just full of intrigue and and all of the. Think of Moses. Think of the things that happened in his life. I mean, that's a nail biter.
Oh yeah, yeah. From his birth,
right,
to almost being killed,
yeah,
to being raised in the Pharaoh. I mean, you could just go through it. And the other thing too is, just memorizing all of these stories. That's a thing that can. I don't know. I just don't understand how somebody could say my My father-in-law says the same thing. That's boring.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I do not understand it. It's the least boring thing you could read.
Right.
You know what's boring? Watching old westerns and stupid B movies. That's boring.
Boring to me.
Watching TV.
Boring to me is watching baseball.
Yeah, that's boring. Even going to a baseball game is boring to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd much rather study the Bible than do that.
I only go to baseball games when somebody gets sweet tickets, and then I can go eat.
Yeah.
I don't watch the game.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, even then, I could have hot dogs at home.
Right.
And I am a fan of hot dogs, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's, you got to put the time in if you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to know the Bible. And then one thing I've been listening to a lot of lessons by this guy Bob Waldron, and one of the things he emphasizes is knowing a Bible story to the point to where you could retell it to a child.
Yeah.
And know all the details, and I think there is something to that.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoy the way he teaches.
Well, and that's evident when you're putting together a lesson to preach. You want to know the information well enough that you can just talk about it. In the beginning, everybody that has ever started to preach, you start out and you're just beholden to those notes.
Oh yeah, you're glued to them.
You're reading word for word in some cases. What you're doing. But as time goes on and you become comfortable with the material, you're a lot. It's a lot more interesting to listen to somebody that knows a little bit about what they're talking about, rather than someone who's just reading a script.
I think the if you listen to a sermon from a guy and you can tell right away this guy knows the Bible inside and out.
Right.
Well, he can bring those stories to life.
Right.
But if you don't have that knowledge base, you can't do that.
Right.
Right. So if you ever expect to lead somebody to Christ,
right,
you got to have some knowledge.
Right.
Because they're going to ask you some questions.
Yeah. And they're not going to be the questions you think.
Yeah, exactly. And you better be prepared to answer those questions.
Right.
Right. And it takes time and study and work.
Right.
So
absolutely.
How are you doing, John?
Oh, it's like 26 minutes, 27 minutes.
We're probably pretty good.
All right. So where did we leave off for next time?
We're going to pick up in verse 12.
All right.
Chapter 3, verse 12.
All right. Well, then, we'll see you there next time. Thanks for joining in.